Andy Paul, welcome to the Simplifying Entrepreneurship Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Pete, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and as entrepreneurs, we're always selling, aren't we?
Yes.
We're selling our our teams, we're selling our clients, we're selling ourselves. We're selling, right? We're always selling.
Well, sure. I think to the point of, if you ever read Dan Pink's book, To Sell Is Human, you made the point that basically, regardless of what profession we're in, but certainly if we're in a traditional sort of white collar profession, that's how we get our work done. That's how we get our job done. We collaborate with people, we influence other people. So we're fundamentally, always selling.
I find it interesting when I talk to a lot of different business owners and entrepreneurs and stuff like that, and they're saying, I just don't like selling. And I'm thinking to myself, you sell every day and almost everything that you do, and it's a mindset shift. It's this idea that we need to embrace selling, right?
Well, I would say it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
And so I talk about this in the book because the book Sell Without Selling Out describes sort of two ways of selling. One I call selling out, one called selling in. And selling out is sort of the conventional stereotype about sales, right? It's sort of the pushy, manipulative, borderline ethical seller, which is sort of the way we train all of our salespeople. So fundamentally, selling out is you're putting your own interest ahead of the buyers, right? So who wants to do that? That sucks. No one wants to do that. But that's not what sales is. That's the way people have been trying to make it for a long time, but that's not what sales is. So your job as a salesperson, or if you're selling something, isn't try to persuade somebody to buy your product, right? Or your point of view or whatever. Your job is to talk to this person, listen to them, understand what are the most important things to them in terms of, it's your buyers, in terms of what are the challenges they face and what are the outcomes they'd like to achieve by addressing these challenges, and then help them get that. One, I'm going to persuade you to buy my products. Here, I'm going to listen and understand what's most important to you, and then I'm going to help you get that. So if you have this unease about selling, just think your job is not to persuade somebody to buy something they don't want to buy, which is what makes people uneasy about it.
Yeah.
My job is to help you achieve something that's important to you.
Yeah, I like that old saying about having small mouth and big ears, right? And
that's part of it.
Yeah, making sure that the whole listening side of things is where it all begins.
Well, it starts really with the ability to connect with another human being. And so in my book, I describe 4 pillars of selling in, to contrast with selling out, selling in. Mm-hmm. So connection, curiosity, understanding, generosity. So it starts with connection. How do I connect with you as a human being? And again, it's, if you're uncomfortable with this idea of selling, it's because you think that you have to put this act on to engage with somebody, but you don't put an act on.
Just be you.
Exactly. And the example I give people, I says, so do you know how to make a friend? Right? If I was to meet you in a social setting, would my instinct be to just talk about myself incessantly? No, right? Almost nobody does that when they meet new people. I don't want to talk to you just to see what I can get from you. I'm interested in you.
Yeah.
And so by being interested in you, I become interesting. And that's just the way it works with humans. Make yourself interesting, be interested in somebody else.
Yeah.
So we make that connection. It's just the same motion you'd make if you met somebody in a social setting.
And then
it's hard for people to think about this because they think they have to put this act on.
Yeah. And so the next step, you're asking the questions, you're introduced, you've kind of broken the ice, let's say, and you've developed, a little bit of hopefully in there, a little bit of empathy, a little bit of credibility, trust, that sort of thing. And then where to next?
Well, actually I save empathy a little bit later because we can get to that. But it's at this point, the trust becomes important. This level of trustworthiness is really what it is, right? It's not like they say, hey, come babysit my kids. It's not that level of trust. But it's trustworthiness is what you're aspiring to. And I describe in the book how to build that relatively simply. But once you've got that, the reason that becomes important because then you're going to start asking questions, right? The questions that help you begin to understand what are the things that are most important to them. Well, your buyer's not going to, they've got a choice about how to answer the questions, right? They can just give you the superficial answer, which is what they do to most people.
Exactly.
But when you build that level of trust, then what they're saying is, look, I'm going to open up a little bit and I'm going to let you stick your nose into my business, right?
Yeah.
As a salesperson, that's what you want. You want to have that level of comfort where they're going to share with you things that they might not ordinarily share with just the regular run-of-the-mill salesperson. And you need to get to that point because you're never going to get to the level of understanding what's most important to them until they open up and let you go a little bit deeper.
Andy, tell us a quick way to do that. Because some of us, a lot of our listeners are in retail, for example. We own some shoe stores, and, there's other people that have quilting stores or pet and dog stores or whatever the case is. When we're going through this, it's one thing when you're selling, B2B and you have the time to build the relationship and all this sort of stuff. But when you have somebody coming in, how do you do that quickly? How do you build those quick bonds that are going to allow you to get down to a little bit more sort of pointed questions?
Right. So at heart, okay, there's this unspoken question that whether you're retail or B2B, that's my first job in sales, selling women's shoes, is the question that buyers are asking is, so why you?
Yeah.
Right? Why should I trust you? Why should I believe you? Why should I give my time to you? And it doesn't matter to decide whether it's B2C or B2B. This question is being asked. You need to be able to answer it. And it's not a question you answer verbally. Right. It's how the buyer experiences you. Right?
Like that.
So start off by just being human, right? Being yourself. Somebody comes in, what do? Do you pitch them on a product, or you ask some interested questions of the buyer? We talked about empathy. What is empathy? Well, empathy is engaged curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is to a certain degree. You will understand why something is important to this person, right? So, being engaged and sustained, listening to understand, not listening to respond. But it's just, start off by being a good human, right? Being yourself.
Yeah.
Ask a question. Be more interested in them than you are in yourself. And if you start there, even at retail, people always like to ding car salespeople, right? I tell people the best sales experiences I've had, both from a business and personal standpoint over the last 5 years, have been car salespeople. They did it right. That was all about me, what I was interested in, what was important to me, how I was going to use the car, what was important to me. And they just did a great discovery, but they did it in a way that was engaging. It wasn't an interrogation. They were friendly.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, yeah, they did a great job.
Easy.
And what it did is it took away my incentive to go talk to another dealer. Because at that point, it wasn't about the car. It was about that person.
Yeah.
And that's the point you want to get to, whether, again, you're at retail or at B2B, is it boils down ultimately to you as the seller, right? Their buyer's experience with you. Because, look, shoes are shoes, by and large, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's styles and brands that people prefer. And so, by and large, shoes are shoes to a certain degree. It's true in B2B. Software. There's so many competitors in every segment of the market that in the mind's eye of the buyer, they're all the same. So what's the tiebreaker? What distinguishes you from the other people? It's you.
It's your humanity.
You're offering
it's who you are, right?
Yeah, right. So be you.
It's interesting you say that. I've been in business a long time, and back, I'm going to say closing in on 30 years ago now, I went to my first, which I had been banking in this bank for 15 years, right from the time I got my first account until the time I started my business. And I went to them to start a business and get my first loan to open this business. And and I had savings and stuff in that account, in that bank. And they basically said, you're too young, essentially. And,
Right.
we're not going to lend you any money. And I went home and I said to my dad, hey, Dad, this particular bank, and I won't name names, but this particular bank isn't going to lend me any money. And he said, walk across the field to the other bank and see what they say. So literally the next day I went to the other bank, which I never, at that time, never even thought of doing, and walked in and they said, not a different person, obviously, come on in. Let's hear about what you're trying to do. And let's see what you're working towards. And have you got a plan? I'm like, yeah, I got a business plan. And here's my business plan, all the stuff. They lent me the money. 20 some years later, 27 years later, 28 years later, I'm still dealing with that same bank.
Still with them. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's as a human, you're the tiebreaker.
Yeah. I like that.
And so you have to be intentional when you deal with people about creating this experience. I mean, to some degree, it's you and you're being authentic, but you also be thoughtful about the fact is, how am I creating an experience that's memorable for my buyer?
Yeah.
Again, you start by being interested in them. A simple thing you talk about, takeaways that people can take away here if they want to practice this.
Yeah.
Is this little drill. It's in my book. It's called the Ask 5 rule. And what it says is that when you meet someone for the first time, and you practice this in a social setting, or you can practice it at work, see if you can ask them 5 questions before you have to say anything about yourself.
I like that. Yeah.
Just practice. You meet somebody at a school event or church or wherever you meet people and socialize, try it. Can you ask 5 questions of them before you have to say anything about yourself? Yeah. And suddenly it starts becoming pretty easy. It starts becoming, a habit.
Yeah.
Because then, habits are, triggered by, there's a trigger, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, the trigger is meeting somebody new. So instead of having the impulse to talk about yourself, your impulse will be, well, I want to ask questions. I'm really interested in this person.
Yeah. I like that. And, if we're doing that, think about how much information we're going to be able to garner that's going to help us help them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
precisely.
They came to you because they had a problem. Obviously, whatever that problem is, in our case, whether it's a pair of shoes or in my coaching business, they have problems with their business, whatever the case is, or, everybody's solving a problem, and your solution is placed in that middle of what their problem is to what their life looks like after using your solution. Right. And that's this idea of how quickly can we get to understanding their problem so we can help them get through it. Right. That's our job as salespeople. Don't you think, Andy, is really helping them get through their transitioning them through their problem?
Yeah. I mean, in essence, right. I mean, I think it's really understanding instead what's most important to them in terms of, I said, that outcome. What is the most important thing? Because if you have that, and there is always a most important thing, then it's less, because with the problems, I think what we do as sellers is ultimately problem solving. Yeah. But first, we're helping them think differently about their problem. We do that through the questions we ask. Yeah. Have you thought about this? Or what would the impact be if you did this instead of this? So you give people trade-offs. You ask them to quantify what the value would be of taking a certain decision. Or, have you ever done, thought about what would happen if you could do ABC instead of XYZ? Yeah. You educate people through your questions. So, we're solving the problem, but first we're going to help them understand the problem.
Yeah, I like that. And Andy, we're already coming towards the end of our conversation here today with our Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast here today. But I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity. I mean, you have lots of different material, lots of ways of getting a hold of you. You've written your 2 other books on top of the one that we talked about today, right? Sell Without Selling Out is your most recent one here. And then 2 other books in the past. You have a podcast and you release, 2 or 3 episodes a week, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're up to 1,045 episodes.
Yeah. So, and the name of your podcast is Sales
Enablement.
Yeah.
So,
I encourage anybody who's, taking this in and is interested in developing sales to follow and to buy Andy's book and to follow his podcast and to, there it is there for those of you who are watching, Sell Without Selling.
Plugging it, yes.
Yeah. So we'll put everything in the show notes as well, Andy. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably LinkedIn. And so connect with me on LinkedIn, then message me if you have questions about anything at all. Yeah. I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. Cool. It's fairly active there. You can subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter as well.
Awesome.
And then, come to andypaul.com. You can get a free download a free chapter of the book if you want. Or if you just want to buy it, go to Amazon.
That works too,
our friendly Amazon, or wherever you buy books.
Yeah.
And buy a copy, and it's available physical books, like real books, digital books, or audiobook.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with me here today, Andy. I really appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners will.
Thank you.
Make it a great day.
Thank you.